I was really frightened.
Sheriff's office, anybody inside, tell me now!
What is this?
And I went, oh, the raids are happening.
Oh my God.
Clear through, clear through.
To have them this close to home
Yeah, these are all one big plant.
was really nerve-wracking.
Here's some of the plants. We thought that the black market would disappear, and evidently it contracted and then began to expand again.
If they lose 3 or 4 houses, that's not a big deal. They still have another 40 or 50 out there.
The thing that nobody predicted is that normalization, commercialization would be a magnet for international black market activity.
But we have seen an indefinite increase in marijuana coming in from Colorado.
We all recognize people that don't live here.
It's difficult to sort of put the genie back in the bottle.
Oh my God.
That's not what I voted for.
Hi, I'm John Ferrugia. Welcome to Insight. When marijuana was legalized in Colorado, it was supposed to kill the black market, but that hasn't happened. Our investigation has found large quantities of illegally grown cannabis are now exported from Colorado to other parts of the country. Tonight, correspondent Lori Jane Gliha and I will take you behind the scenes to see the effort to attack illegal grows in rural areas and suburban neighborhoods. And we will show you a trail from Colorado to the East Coast where criminal organizations are cashing in. Despite efforts to stop it, the business of illegal marijuana is booming. It is becoming almost routine across much of the country. Law enforcement intercepting Colorado marijuana products being exported to other states. In this case, a traffic stop in Tennessee netted 100 pounds of processed pot worth tens of thousands of dollars. In Indiana, it was a lettuce truck headed from Colorado to Florida with a load of marijuana. In South Carolina, it came through the mail. And in Douglas County, investigators caught this woman who had flown in from Florida to drive a load of marijuana east.
And they were going to drop all this all off in Florida.
I thought so.
Across our state, TV news viewers see grow house raids almost weekly in both rural and metropolitan areas as law enforcement tries to keep up with the burgeoning black market. But when Colorado voters approved legalization of marijuana, it was never supposed to be this way.
Every plant here has an RFID tag, and this is logged from seed to sale.
Chris Woods is president of Terrapin Station, a company that cultivates and dispenses marijuana and THC products for both medical and recreational use.
There's a perpetual cultivation cycle that's happening throughout this facility.
His meticulous legal grow operations are scrutinized, tracked, and regulated by the Colorado Department of Revenue and the State Marijuana Enforcement Division.
I think one of the mistakes that was made in Colorado and some other states is allowing for home cultivation. And what we're seeing right now is a lot of cleanup from mistakes that have been made.
I had never been in an indoor marijuana grow. I had heard about them.
Kevin Merrill, the former agent in charge of Colorado's Office of the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration, agrees. When he first arrived in Denver as a federal drug enforcement agent in 2001, large illegal marijuana grows weren't even on the radar.
Most of those that I'd even heard about really involved, a couple of individuals trying to make some product for themselves and then sell whatever extra they had to fund their operation. It was a very small mom and pop operation.
He says when Colorado began allowing up to 99 plants to be grown for medical purposes by an individual or caregiver, and doctors were paid for their recommendation for the expanded plant count, everything changed.
I think the 99 plant thing really opened the floodgates. We started seeing organizations from outside of Colorado, specifically Cuban nationals from Florida, and they would apply with the Colorado Department of Public Health to get their marijuana card that said that they were allowed to have 99 plants. If you got 10 of those people signed up, you effectively could have 990 plants in a residence.
And he says the Colorado Marijuana Enforcement Division was powerless.
They had no oversight over residential marijuana grows.
That meant criminal organizations could grow with impunity.
They have plumbers, they have electricians, they have front people who rent and buy houses, they have money people, they have an underground banking money laundering
It's like a corporation.
System. Exactly, just like a corporation.
Bob Troyer, who recently stepped down as Colorado's U.S. attorney, witnessed the normalization of marijuana in the state.
The thing that nobody predicted is that normalization, commercialization would be a magnet for international black market activity.
And it wasn't just house grows. Federal agents busted massive marijuana grows on public lands around the state by what they say were primarily Mexican criminal groups. There were hundreds of plants with water diverted from streams and rivers using unapproved fertilizers and insecticides.
The cultivation, the equipment I need for the cultivation, all of that is considered normal and legal by the average person who might observe it. My only remaining risk point then is transport, exporting it out to the markets on the East Coast. That's a hell of a lot less risk than the risk of starting in Mexico.
And it wasn't only federal and state law enforcement and prosecutors who were taken by surprise.
We thought that the black market would disappear.
The governor says the state was indeed caught off guard.
And evidently it contracted and then began to expand again. And that's counterintuitive, right? It's not what you would expect.
The governor and the Colorado legislature responded last year by funding $6 million in grants to reimburse local law enforcement for costs to fight the illegal market, as well as $1.2 million for a marijuana task force. And lawmakers voted to reduce the medical marijuana plant count for residential growing from a maximum of 99 plants to 12.
Frankly, that change was window dressing in the eyes of the black marketers.
Prosecutors and law enforcement say that's because the criminal infrastructure is already in place, and marijuana is now part of Colorado's culture.
How did legalization of recreational exacerbate the issue?
Just provided more cover.
If your neighbor sees you walking in with 6 plants, they think that that's acceptable, but they don't know what's inside your house.
But despite the legitimate marijuana industry and federal, state, and local efforts to attack the black market, it is thriving in Colorado.
As long as they can grow their product and create a product that's worth a whole lot more money on the East Coast than it is here, they're willing to take the risk because the profits are enormous.
Holy crap, oh my God!
Perched at the front window of her mom's Firestone, Colorado home,
This is the house.
Angie Wright was in the perfect position to press record.
Oh my God.
It was just, holy cow. Yeah. Something major is going on.
In March 2018,
Oh my God, they're everywhere.
mother and daughter were together in the suburban subdivision about 32 miles north of Denver.
What is this?
When a truck filled with armed law enforcement officers rolled into their neighborhood.
But you couldn't even walk on these streets. There were so many cops everywhere. It was amazing.
And armed police started banging on doors.
Oh, they're going across the street.
I thought maybe it was just the house next door.
Oh, they're going in the backyard of that house in the corner.
To find out it was as many homes, neither one of us had any idea.
And I went, oh, the raids are happening.
Down the street,
I won't say it was exciting, but it was kind of invigorating.
Melissa Pop watched too.
And then I pulled my breakfast and I watched from the dining room.
She saw police pulling hundreds of pot plants from some of the 7 homes they hit, and says she always suspected something was up across the street since no one seemed to live there.
Every so often a car would pull up and go immediately into the garage door would shut, and then maybe an hour later they'd leave.
Pop and her neighbors aren't alone. Our investigation revealed the Firestone raids in March of 2018 are part of a federal case that started a year earlier. And they're linked to a web of other suburban properties across the Denver metro area and beyond.
Piles and piles of marijuana were being seized this morning,
including police searches in Frederick.
DEA hit more than 24 houses.
Aurora.
As part of an investigation into black market marijuana.
And Thornton.
Hi, how are you?
We talked to a man staying in one of the raided Thornton homes. From inside the house, he told us police surprised the sleeping residents very early one summer morning.
They point a gun on everybody.
Yeah.
All the cops.
But made no immediate arrests or charges.
Like, did they take anything? Was there anything?
Oh yeah, they take all the money. Take all the cars.
We obtained federal drug enforcement records showing agents searched at least 130 related homes and businesses between March 2017 and October 2018. And this is just a single case. Sources close to it say hundreds more properties are linked to this one major investigation and may eventually be searched. The DEA has seized more than 40,000 plants so far, making it Colorado's most complex federal black market marijuana case since the state legalized recreational cannabis in 2014.
This is not unique to Denver. Okay, Colorado Springs has multiple cases going on with large-scale criminal organizations moving black market marijuana. So does Pueblo. A lot of times people, they don't even know there's a marijuana grow next door.
There's a fine line between being a nosy neighbor and being a good citizen.
The feds pulled as many as 700 plants from Clint Stanton's neighbor's house in 2018.
I kind of put the smell of marijuana on the pay no mind list a little bit because it's legal here.
To understand where else authorities are searching, Rocky Mountain PBS obtained records showing every federal black market marijuana search warrant since 2014 in which the DEA seized marijuana. We plotted each address on a map and found an increasing number of search warrants every year. So far in 2018, the DEA has seized at least 9 times as many plants as they did in 2014. We also looked at prosecutions in state court, where many cases end up. Our analysis shows an increasing number of black market type charges like cultivation of more than 30 plants, conspiracy, and possession of large amounts of marijuana. We found nearly 7 times the number of those charges in 2017 compared to 2014. Meanwhile, other marijuana charges like simple possession went down dramatically.
We still don't know whether the decision to prosecute those big cases now means that there are more of those big cases or that's a new emphasis of law enforcement.
Sam Kamen teaches marijuana law and policy at the University of Denver and says despite recent complex cases and an increase in prosecutions, it is tough to know whether the illegal market is growing precisely because it is illegal. Other measures of marijuana's impact are more precise.
It's an illegal market. It's not something that, you know what you have in revenue, you know what you have in sales. You can do pretty good surveys in terms of whether youth or adults are using marijuana more often, but the black market is a lot harder than most of those to measure.
For people like Angie and her mom Jeannie, who both support legal marijuana,
Look at all the police cars.
the black market is real. And it's happening way too close to home.
I think it's a terrible thing for that to be going on.
Oh my God.
Especially in neighborhoods.
Policia! Policia! Search warrant!
In Custer County, Colorado,
Clear through. Clear through.
where citizens voted against retail and medical marijuana shops,
Yeah, these are all one big plant.
houses like this one tend to stand out.
To have them this close to home was really nerve-wracking.
Bob Dreyer and his wife Carol have lived full-time in rural Custer County for 13 years. But in 2016, it only took a few seconds for them to notice what the neighbors had moved in down the street.
We were 40 feet from the building, and she said, "That is an awful smell. It's marijuana."
Oh my goodness, it smells like terrible in here.
Sheriff's deputies found 80 large plants, an elaborate electrical setup,
They've got this piggybacked off of the main bus bar.
and this guy,
My phone?
a Cuban national named Alejandro Diaz, who had been living in the grow house tending to plants. Rocky Mountain PBS obtained this body camera footage showing his interview with a county deputy through a translator. The police report suggests the deputy suspected Alejandro to be a possible victim of human trafficking.
He does this for his family, for his wife and his children, his 2 daughters who are all alone in Cuba, and all he wants to do is bring them here and give them a better life.
They rotate these individuals through these grows. I think they do that essentially so that they don't become intimately familiar with any one grow. Here's some of the plants.
Custer County Sheriff Shannon Byerly says he's had a few cases like this one in which the people captured on the grow sites are not the actual masterminds.
He's really distraught. I think
Yes.
he was just taken for a ride by somebody.
It is difficult to know Alejandro Diaz's full backstory and how much he actually knew about the grow operation since he never showed up for his hearing. But buried in court paperwork across the state, we found other people with similar stories. Many individuals working at illegal grow sites are often migrants or foreign nationals who seem to know little about the black market with which they are involved.
So that is 1,100.
In 2015, 2 Mexican migrants busted at separate sites, like this one along the Dolores River, said they were conned into growing on public land. One with fake grow permits, the other driven from Chicago with the promise of a construction job. In a 2016 case involving a grow in the San Isabel National Forest,
You can see the shoes that they were provided. There's big, giant holes in them.
defense attorney Lisa Moses called her client naive.
He was a deer in the headlights.
We obtained these photographs from her case showing makeshift living quarters in the middle of the forest. In court records, she said her client lived in poverty in Mexico, crossed into the U.S. illegally, sent money home to his family when he could, and had no prior criminal history when he started working at the site to pay off a debt.
They don't have coats, they don't have food, they have nothing. They're sleeping outside, and they have no idea where they are. And it is awful. Other people can do that to another human being.
A judge sentenced him to 1 year in federal prison and deported him to Mexico. We asked Sheriff Byerly to take us beyond the rural, windy trails into the San Isabel Forest in Custer County to see the conditions firsthand.
There's thousands of square miles of national forest. They don't want to put those grows where people are going to stumble upon them. They carry in their food supplies and just all the things that they need to live.
We looked for the spot where another sophisticated marijuana grow operated for months, hidden among the trees.
So it's a bit of a hike in this direction, about a half mile this way, where law enforcement says they found thousands of plants in 2017.
Danilo Jimenez Lopez had twice been deported when police captured him. From jail, he told us he worried the people who brought him to the site had weapons. They told him there were bears nearby, and he wondered how he would escape.
I'm thankful to God that the police got me. I didn't know what was going to happen.
Danilo, who is uneducated, faces 5 years in federal prison. Authorities admit people like him are simply small fish in a much larger crime scheme. But former U.S. Attorney Bob Troyer says cases like his are still important to prosecute.
There is a deterrent in it because it costs the organization money and trouble, and that drives their business decisions.
Troyer says arresting and charging the low-level laborers often leads to important information in a bigger investigation.
We learn a lot of valuable things about how they pick the locations they're in, how they got their stuff in there, what else we're missing.
Those low-level people know nothing. They're the pawns. They're the throwaways. They don't give them any information so that when they do get caught, they know that the higher-ups are still protected.
Despite concerns from people like Lisa Moses, federal officials say their crackdown on public lands in 2017 led to the removal of at least 71,000 marijuana plants and multiple arrests. The enforcement focus seems to be shifting back to illegal grows in businesses and homes that may be connected to criminal syndicates in other states. Places like the houses in Bob and Carol's community.
If you want to raise your marijuana plants for your personal use, that's your business. But when you're doing it for illegal sales and it's in my neighborhood, I don't like that.
The house down the street from Carol and Bob sits empty now after Custer County Sheriff's deputies raided it twice.
So this is a second bust, and we actually seized this trailer.
And this evidence came from another illegal grow house just down the street.
That's a 1,000-watt bulb. The ballasts are expensive, and you can see the stacks of them there against the wall.
Marijuana chopper. You can see all the marijuana that's on the floor right here that was still setting in this.
But the sheriff says he's had trouble getting to the root of the problem and holding those responsible accountable.
The last grow that we did, the owner of that property, we know for a fact that he's linked to at least 8 properties.
Our investigation of property and court documents linked many of them to members of the same Miami area family. Police didn't find the family members in the houses, but each either owned or rented some of the buildings.
It's unfortunate that we are the victims, at least I am.
We reached one woman on the phone who told us she rented her house, hoping to buy it as an eventual retirement property. She says she had nothing to do with the grow inside her house and did nothing illegal.
The only thing we ever did was purchase a property and rent it out.
Police never arrested or charged her, but federal authorities claimed her house was among 8 properties from which they pulled 1,000 total plants in 2015. Many of the people who were arrested said they thought their medical marijuana cards allowed them to grow legally. One defendant even said a member of that same Miami family recruited him for what he thought was a legal operation. So we traveled to Florida to find out more.
So we've landed in Miami, and now we're headed to a business to check out one of these guys that owned one of the homes in Colorado that had the illegal grow in it.
We're not reporting his name because he isn't facing charges. But in 2018, police raided his house for a second time since the 2015 federal case. They confiscated 125 plants. We went to a North Miami business in a building he owns, but he wasn't there. And as we headed to his waterfront neighborhood, he called me.
We're in Miami today, and I thought I'd try to see if I could catch up with you.
Legally, we couldn't record what he said, but he told me he was out of town and wasn't involved with the grow operations inside his Colorado home.
Did you know about it? Not really?
The man explained that he once tried getting into the commercial marijuana business in Colorado, but gave up. We tried to speak with a third Miami family member, Iroel Montejo, who recently pleaded not guilty to unrelated cocaine trafficking charges in Florida. Colorado authorities raided his Custer County property 2 times, in 2015 and again in 2016.
Is that Monteo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't that the same one that was on it when the DEA hit it?
Police arrested the people tending the grows at his house, but never brought charges against Montejo. And he filed court papers saying he was an innocent property owner. We couldn't track him down for a comment, but authorities in Colorado and Florida are finding other connections between these 2 states.
Colorado authorities say Cuban nationals, a Cuban syndicate.
He's from Florida
with ties to organized crime,
but he has ties to Cuba.
These people came from Florida.
This is a trend that we've been seeing since about early 2014.
Justin Miller is the intelligence chief for the DEA field office in Miami.
Cuban drug trafficking organizations relocating to places such as Colorado, setting up operations, leaving their proxies back here in the state of Florida, and producing large-scale marijuana for distribution, diversion out of Colorado.
Colorado state data shows police seized Colorado marijuana in at least 34 states. In Florida, at least 70 times since 2013, more than every other state on the East Coast combined. Miller says Florida once led the nation in indoor seizures at grow houses, but not anymore.
Of course, opportunities arise 2013, 2014 in other states with the legalization movement. So they relocate as organizations to other parts of the country, such as Colorado.
What was it about Colorado that made it so appealing for some of these organizations?
It's just a widespread perception that growing marijuana up there is much less scrutinized.
So a year later, we have the same stuff happening here.
Federal authorities in Colorado tell us they're looking closely at the state's ties with Miami. And that is welcome news to the Custer County Sheriff, who wants to do more than scratch the surface.
With the legalization of cannabis in Colorado, some may wonder why there is such an intense law enforcement focus on marijuana.
This isn't just about marijuana. So if you consider organized crime, it's bankrolling other aspects of their crime organization.
These are just opportunistic, highly functional, sophisticated drug organizations.
And neighbors say it's unnerving, knowing they could be set up right next door.
Immediately after it happened, I took steps here to make my house more secure. This is still a reminder of possible organized crime.
I was really frightened.
Carol Kennedy started carrying a gun after the busts in her neighborhood.
I just realized that those were really evil people.
I'm not afraid of the pot itself, but I don't want grow operations in my mom's neighborhood.
So authorities keep knocking down doors.
Holy crap, that's scary.
Destroying plants and putting pressure on criminal groups.
There are costs of doing this business that they accept and they calculate. If you are constantly increasing those costs and increasing those risks, you do change their behavior.
35 in here.
Certainly if we don't push back on it aggressively,
it'll get worse.
35 and 35, 70.
What we never know at any moment in real time is if we've passed a tipping point, we've made a dent, and now we've deterred the behavior.
But could there be another approach? Some argue national legalization would take care of the black market for good.
If there's no demand for marijuana from other states, then there will not be the supply to meet it. It's just a function of business.
Would national legalization of marijuana stop the black market?
No. You would always be able to go out there and probably find it cheaper than what you can through a state-regulated business.
Canada now becomes a test case. Does legalizing marijuana from coast to coast get rid of the illegal market? Or will that country just become another major exporter of illegal marijuana?
I hope all these people who are buying and ruining all these homes, killing wildlife, destroying water in our forests, go to Canada.
The other element no one predicted is the cost of containing the black market. While the legal marijuana industry brings in almost $250 million in annual tax revenue, our investigation has found that no state or federal agency is tracking the costs of investigating the illegal market. This is an issue that more states will have to confront as they consider and implement the legalization of cannabis. That's our insight for tonight. I'm John Ferrugia. Thanks for joining us. Good night.